good morning, everybody, or maybe by now it's afternoon, I believe, but it's a great morning in the sense that this is the dawn of a new era that it is my great pleasure to be a part of, and I like to think that I am helping to bring this era into our world, into our society. And it is just wonderful to see the transformations that we're seeing in vegan food availability and proliferation and vegan confidence for our choice to not make animals suffer and die for our eating habits. And to see so many people whose habits are now being reformed to embrace a compassionate lifestyle and a caring kind of attitude toward animals, toward the earth, and toward ourselves and our own body and our own being. Before I continue, I want to direct you to our table over there, United Poultry Concerns, right next to Fish Feel. And please stop by. We have a lot of free literature there for you to take with you, and you can sign up and you can get our magazine Poultry Press online or in the regular mail or whatever. And it's good that United Poultry Concerns and Fish Feel are there together because, as many of you may already know, chickens and fishes constitute the largest number of abused animals on the planet, on land and in the water. Most people, I think, are aware of the fact that of the 9 out of 10 billion animals being raised and slaughtered in the United States alone, 9 of those 10 billion land animals are chickens, and many hundreds of millions of turkeys and ducks and other birds go through what we call our feed system. Now, I started United Poultry Concerns in 1990, so we've been at this for 27 years. Yes, 27 years. Now, back in the late 1980s, when I was talking to some of my friends and fellow activists, I was telling them how I was considering starting an organization that would focus on chickens and turkeys. And at that time, there were some fellow activists who were very, very supportive, but there were others who said, you will never be able to sustain an organization that focuses on chickens and turkeys. Well, that was 27 years ago. My attitude back then and continues to be this: as activists, as people who care about animals and about having a relationship with them that isn't based on violence and cruelty and abuse, our job as advocates is to get people to care, to learn how to get people to care about and to understand chickens and turkeys, and to not want to make them suffer the horrible, horrible lives that they're forced to suffer in order to be considered food. Now, in 1998, I moved our whole organization to a very rural part of Virginia. We are located in one of the largest chicken-producing parts of the country, known as the Delmarva Peninsula. The Delmarva Peninsula is the eastern shore of Maryland, Virginia, and all of Delaware. At any given time on the Delmarva Peninsula, over 500 million chickens are living in dark, filthy, cesspool-like sheds. Over 5,000 of these long 600-foot sheds are down where we are located. We're there for our chicken sanctuary. If you go to visit our sanctuary, you will today, on a beautiful day like this, you'll see our chickens, our rescue chickens, running around, sitting in the trees. enjoying the sun. Chickens love to sunbathe and dust bathe, and so do turkeys. They actually lie down on their sides in the sun. They lift their feathers so the sun can penetrate into their skin. And people who have never seen this behavior before will think that they're either sick, dying, or dead. And they're just so moved when I say, well, no, these birds are taking a sun bath. In the winter, the birds will follow the sun around the yard when there's very little sun on very short days. Turkeys do the same thing. Another enchanting thing that chickens and turkeys do is they love to take dust baths. And what they do is, this is how they keep themselves clean. They make dust bowls, and then for about 20 minutes they just put the earth all through their feathers and their skin and everything, and they lie there, they have their eyes closed, and they're in a state of bliss. And once one chicken starts to take a dust bath, then another will join, and another will join, and another will join, and you've got this little group of like innocent chickens enjoying the earth, which is how they evolved to live. Many people who hear the word chicken, sadly and horrifically, only think of what's for dinner or what's in a sandwich. And they don't know these birds, and they don't know their intelligence and how emotional and how social they are. Chickens come from the tropical forests of Southeast Asia, and their wild relatives continue living there to this day, very successfully raising their families, running around in the forest, calling to one another, doing their dust baths and their sun baths, and living a very, very happy and very benign life, fitting into the earth and the environment and the ecology of the tropical forest. One of the saddest things that is now happening to these wild chickens who have been there for tens of thousands of years is that they are losing their habitat because we're taking away the rainforest. And as we take away the rainforest, these wild chickens, along with so many other species of animals, become extinct. They don't have any homeland anymore. They can't raise their young properly. They can't find food and do all the things that nature designed them to be able to do. One of the big causes of the erosion of the rainforest is the KFC industry, the chicken industry, along with the raising of cows for burgers and beef and all that. The rainforest is being eroded for those purposes, and it's a horrible, tragic irony to think of chickens who live naturally and benignly on the earth to be losing their home for the sake of raising crops which are highly, highly toxic from all the pesticides and all the herbicides and all the other poisons that are poured into these crops to feed to the chickens who are living in the dark, filthy concentration camps that they never escape from until they're grabbed by their legs as brutally as you can imagine, thrown into transport crates, and trucked to the slaughterhouses. Now, because we're on the eastern shore of Virginia, we live very close to two huge chicken slaughterhouses. One is owned by Tyson, the other is Purdue. And when you are driving up and down the roads on the eastern shore of Virginia or Maryland or Delaware, you see all day long, every day, and at night as well, truckload after truckload after truckload stuffed with these baby chickens. They're only 6 weeks old. They're just babies. There are like 2,500 in each truck. And I remember that a friend of mine years ago from New York City came down to Delaware, where we were holding a protest in front of one of the chicken slaughterhouses there. And when she saw the chickens coming in truckload after truckload of chickens in the cages on the flatbed trucks, she said, you know, I thought they would be jumping around and they would be yelling and making all this noise. She said, and I was so surprised that they don't move. They're so still. And I explained to my friend that they are so terrified and defeated. These are baby birds who have never known anything in their lives but human violence, human cruelty, and living in absolute filth. And it is just amazing to see advertisements and to read articles promoting so-called chicken as a health food. Nothing could be farther from the truth. These birds are raised in total squalor. They are raised in their own excrement and that of their predecessors. Many people are under the mistaken impression for the past 10 or so years that there's such a thing as humane animal farming. That is different from the Tyson and Purdue standard factory farming. But what we are now having done by undercover investigators is doing undercover investigations not only of the Tyson slaughterhouses and hatcheries and so on, but they're starting to go into these so-called humane farms where products, eggs, dairy, excuse me, chicken and turkey and whatnot, you name it, are being sold at places like Whole Foods and other more upscale type food outlets, grocers, and that are being marketed as humanely raised. Excuse me. I've been yelling in the parade. I yelled and yelled, go vegan, go vegan. Now I'm losing my voice. But the thing is that when these undercover investigations go into these so-called humane, organic, cage-free operations, what do they find? They find the same factory farming conditions as you find in the so-called standardized factory farm, industrialized animal and poultry production facilities. So I want everybody who thinks that there is a humane animal product alternative to so-called factory farming to understand that that is a lie, that that is not true. Do not be fooled by so-called humanely certified this, that, or the other. Believe me, these chickens and hens, for example, who are raised for the egg industry, whether they're called cage-free, free-range, organic, or whatever, or battery caged, they have their, they have their beaks burned off at the hatcheries. They are living with 1 square foot of living space, and I have been in these so-called cage-free operations where the hens are not in little wire battery cages stacked to the ceiling and as far as the eye can reach, but they're completely imprisoned, and they have no space between one chicken and another. And they're often also on these platforms. And one of the reasons that many of these so-called cage-free hens break their bones and dislocate their bones is that when they try to jump off the platforms, they can't find a place to jump because it's just a sea of hens below them. So they'll try to make a leap, and then they'll break their bones, and then they'll dislocate their wings and their legs and so on. All of the animals who are raised for whatever food product, if they live through that phase of their life, they are going to be rounded up brutally, thrown into transport crates, and they're going to go to slaughter plants. They're going to be filled with terror. They're going to be filled with fear. In the catching process, they're going to have more broken bones. They often have broken necks. They've known nothing but suffering. A day like this with blue sky, they never get to set their feet on the earth. They never experience the joy of being alive in this world. Never. when they get to the slaughter plants, and I'll stick right now to the birds, the chickens, the turkeys, the ducks, they are subjected to agonizing, paralytic, electric shocks. They are actually hung upside down very quickly, very brutally, hung upside down. They go through on an assembly line. They are dragged through cold, salted, electrified water, which is designed only to paralyze their muscles so that their feathers will come out more easily after they're dead. And this is before they even have their necks partially cut. So anybody who has ever shocked even just your finger with electricity, try to imagine what it feels like to have electricity going through your eyes and your ears and your heart and your whole body. These birds, every single bird that people think is a so-called health food, was tortured that way. If they were raised on a smaller, so-called smaller farm like Polyface or something like that in Virginia, then what they do is they throw them into what they call killing cones. Well, this is a form of torture also, because now the birds are so immobilized that when they have their throats cut, they can't even move. And these farmers actually have the nerve to say that this is humane, but it isn't inhumane, and it isn't intended to be humane. It is only intended to keep the birds still while they cut their throats, and the birds can't even flail around as they would naturally do. Now, I contrast all of this horror, which is done for nothing, since nobody needs to eat a chicken or a turkey or a duck. Nobody needs to eat an egg. And nowadays, we have so many foods to choose from, with more all the time. I contrast all of this needless misery and horror and hell and human violence with our birds in our sanctuary, and how on a day like this they are enjoying themselves, and how when these birds are rescued from these terrible operations, if they live long enough to recover, as soon as they're in an environment that they recognize as being for them as chickens, their natural behavior emerges. They know how to take a sun bath and a dust bath. They know how to run around on their legs, which are designed to run. All of these birds who are being raised for meat or eggs, they can't even walk. The hens can't walk because they don't have any room to move, or else they're in their battery cages, so they can't even stand up straight. If they're being raised for the meat industry, they have been bred and overbred and inbred and crossbred to the point where these chickens and turkeys, they cannot even stand up on their own legs because their bodies have been bred to be so heavy and their bones are so weak. So these birds who evolved in the natural world to be running around and walking all the time, they are crippled. And when people are eating what they call a drumstick, you are eating the leg of a bird who lived in pain, in skeletal pain, in muscular pain, and in absolute terror. I mean, when we hear about all the talk about being scared of ISIS, being scared of terrorists, let us understand that animal farming is ISIS for all these animals. We are ISIS for all these animals. That is what being part of the food industry as a consumer means. It means you're supporting ISIS for these animals because we are their terrorists. So if we do not want to ingest their terror and their misery in our bodies, we have got to be vegan. And there's no excuse for anybody who understands the situation to do anything less than to say, I'm going to be vegan, I'm not going to wait till next week, let there be peace, and let it start today, right now, with me. So thank you for your attention, thank you for being here, thank you for being vegan, thank you for caring about these animals and joining everybody to make this world a world of compassion and joy for all. Thank you.